p.m. And this evening, we are discussing the topic, elections in East Africa, analyzing the state of democracy in the region. And with me, I have an able panel, and I'll start from my far left. I have Honorable Tuliazarwa Mark Mugisha. He's a lawyer, and he is a candidate for Member of Parliament, Kira Municipality Constituency. You're welcome, sir. Please say hello to our viewers.
Good evening, viewers. And I appreciate UTV for hosting me for this show. And I greet you all, most especially the people of Kira Municipality. Thank you.
Next, I have His Excellency Mutesasira Expedito. He's a lawyer and is also the Guild President at the Law Development Center, Mbarara Campus. You're welcome, sir.
Yes, thank you, sir. Good evening, our viewers. We thank you for sparing your time and listen to our views. This is the only way we can build our country. Thank you.
Next, I have Enoch Sembalirwa, Right Honorable Prime Minister. He's a lawyer and he's also the Guild Prime Minister at the Law Development Center, Kampala Campus. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers. I'm so happy to be with you here. Thank you very much.
We are streaming live on YouTube. So you could go on YouTube and search U24 television and then watch us live. Then send us your comments, your questions, or your contributions. We shall be reading them through. Indeed, if you do so through that YouTube channel. And I want to start off immediately. Our case study today is Tanzania, the elections that have taken place in Tanzania. And I want Enoch to start us off. What is the state of Tanzania and where are we?
Thank you very much, Vianney. But before I talk about the current state of Tanzania, allow me first dwell into the history of Tanzania. Well, we understand that as Uganda, we almost have similar and the same political background. It's worth it to take note that Tanzania became independent on the 9th of December, 1961. And that happened with the energy of the first political party in Tanzania, and that was TANU. What must be noted that the first president of Tanzania, that was Kambarage Julius Nyerere. And one of his famous quotes is that leadership or politics, it's a game of ideas. He who sells most his idea to the people, he always wins the election. And from 1961, what we can see that Tanzania has tried to embrace democracy. It has tried in a way that we have seen several transitions of power. If I'm to talk about from Julius Nyerere, then we had Ali Hassan Mwinyi, then we had President Benjamin Mkapa, then we had Jakaya Kikwete, then we had John Pombe Magufuli. Unfortunately, he passed on. But however, it should be noted that he was succeeded by the current president, His Excellency Samia Suluhu. However, what we see in Tanzania at a moment is that Tanzania has been faced by what we call like a backlash. If I may look at a series of events, when Samia Suluhu took over in 2021, she made certain things and she gave hope to the people of Tanzania that a lot was going to change. But however, starting from 2024, then things started to change. We see that on the August of 11th, 2024, many political leaders of the political party called Chadema were arrested, and there were no clear charges against them. Leaders like Tundu Lissu, they were arrested, The party chairman, Freeman Mbowe, he was arrested. And on top of that, over 500 young leaders and people who were not happy with what was happening in Tanzania were also arrested. And what does that speak to you? That one shows that by that time, the politics or the democracy that was built over time, it had started to deteriorate. Now, we see that after that time, like about a few weeks, demonstrations were banned. Political opposition leaders and all people who didn't believe in the leadership of Tanzania were banned from demonstration. And we see that after that time, many people were arrested. Over 8 cases of mysterious circumstances. People just disappeared from the blue. And if I may talk about people like Chipanya just received a call, and just from the blue, he disappeared. And since then, is nowhere to be seen. And many other leaders. Now, if I may talk about the Citizens newspaper, that's one of the famous newspaper in Kenya. In Tanzania. It published an article. Which article? It had President Samia Suluhu looking onto the television, changing over, and looking onto the television. There are people crying, people suffering. And what happened next is that the television or the newspaper was banned for 30 days. And that one speaks to us that democracy was deteriorating in Tanzania. Now, we see that we also had an incident on the 6th of September where we had Ali Muhammad, one of the politicians in Chadema. And we see that he was abducted by unknown men, and 2 days later we see that he was killed with brutus, with many bruises. And then lastly, I'll talk about the incident that happened on the 4th of October 2024, where we had John Charles Tesila, who is a weapons instructor in the Tanzanian Air Force Army. And he released a video which went viral, and he was talking about that if you do not take a coup d'etat in Tanzania, then what will happen? This nation is going to die because they are eating it. And then 2 days later, he was abducted, and even up to date, his whereabouts are not known. So briefly, that's happening in Tanzania.
Thank you very much for that background. Mutesasira, Enoch seems to be suggesting that all is gloomy in Tanzania. But the people voted a few days ago. They went to the polls and they voted. And I don't know whether you agree with the picture he has painted, that it is all gloomy. Is there hope in Tanzania? And we also get news that most people have been killed, many people have been killed in the post-election violence in Tanzania. Could that have been avoided? Is there hope in Tanzania?
Is there hope in Tanzania? I think that is a question to the leadership of Tanzania, because I have a belief, just like I've already said here, and I will continue to say that it all starts and ends with leadership. I think the election that happened in Tanzania, it is just a sample of the free and fair elections we normally have in Africa, where, you know, if you get whatever took place in Tanzania, it is the same thing that happened in so many African countries. And of course, imprisoning of the opposition members, like now for the case of Tanzania, I don't know if in any other countries in Africa they normally imprison them, but for Tanzania, the leading opposition member is Tundu Lissu, just like he has told you, a member of Chadema. Previously, before the death of the previous president, that is Magufuli, he had he was shot at, almost about 16 bullets in one person, and I think
that's Tundu Lissu. He was
that
shot.
is Tundu Lissu, yes, and he was exiled to Europe. And then during Samia Suluhu's time, when she's now president, she goes to call him back to the country, and they co-work. And then I think he objected to a few things here and there, constitutional matters, and he was imprisoned. So the alternative there was a certain gentleman of Wazalendo. It is also another political party, who was, of course, blocked from participating in the election. And what happened? So the election, it wasn't an election, it was a selection. I normally hold the view that Africans don't hold elections, they hold selections. You go into an election when you know the outcomes already, that so-and-so will be, they will emerge the winner. So this happened, and I think the voices that you see, the protests that you see in Tanzania are just that alternative sound to the would-be normal way of communication. Because you see, when you deny people the opportunity to put on table their grievances, the only way they will show you their grievances, it is by going to the streets. And of course, some people have come up to term it as Gen Z, this and this generation, but truth is, every generation has had youths as the forefront fighters. So personally, I commend the people of Tanzania. It is my personal view. I commend them. I want to appraise them, applaud them, and actually raise them to always do that, because the role of any generation, it is to fight for their interests. You see, this was a free and fair election where you had the leader of opposition, the main leaders of opposition.
Now,
one
the
is
question
in prison,
is,
the
as
other one
you
is...
give them a go-ahead, what have they achieved in the post-election demonstrations?
In the post-election demonstrations, personally, you see, it's not that every time you go to the shop, you get what you want. But even mere agitation, mere show of interest that you want that is a step, you know. Tanzania, for a long time, in the East African region, actually in Africa, has been an island of peace, an island of, you know, where you never hear of protests. These have been matters of, you know, Kenya, Uganda, and other countries. And now you're seeing that it has become an ocean of actually protests. It is now the lead. That's why we're talking about it.
Thank you.
Don't you think that is important? Just to highlight this, we normally call the African elections free and fair. We normally, by the leaders, they normally want to paint that good picture. But truth is, we've never had a free and fair election. We always have selections, and these are sham elections. How can we have a president elected with over 98%, meaning almost the entire country elected for Madam Samia Suluhu? And then you're having protests on the streets. You're having so many people dying. So where are the 98% that voted for her? Can't they counter that protesting, you know, protesting numbers? Huh? You're having 98%, vote, you know, you win with over 98%. And your non-swearing in the, you know there are precedents. Even in politics, there are precedents. So in Tanzania, they have been doing their swearing-in ceremonies in a known stadium. And for this time round, of course, they have been open. This time round, we are having a swearing-in or inauguration ceremony in a small ground where actually it is even broadcasted, not open to public. So that is democracy for Africans by these leaders. And that is where I call upon the young generation, the youths that call themselves Gen Zs, your only role when you still have this energy, that youthful energy, it is to agitate for your rights. It is to demand, what you deserve. Your interests, you should put them on the table, and there is no way you're going to be heard by just enjoying the TikTok or the WhatsApp. You should start talking about these things. That's why I want to thank you, TV, for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. And speaking of democracy, I'm going to Mark to help us. He's contesting for MP Kira municipality. I think he believes in democracy. Enlighten us about that democracy. Mutesasira seems to be saying that people need to come up and assert themselves. How can people do that democratically? But also, do we have alternatives to democracy? Those which are better than democracy? Such that maybe we can take that. Because he applauds the people of Tanzania, but the last time I checked, the reports were like 700 people had been killed. Of course, there could be more or there could be less, but the reports said about 700 people had been killed. So is that democracy? What is democracy?
Thank you so much. When we talk about democracy, I would simply say democracy is what you take it to be. We have had several people come out to explain what they partake of democracy. But of interest, because you will hear most of the people go in for Aristotle's view that democracy is a system, government of the people, by the people, for the people. Now, if we are to take it lightly to that level, it means all the people have to get involved. The system must operate in favor of the people, and whatever is done by the people for their own good. Now, that would apply effectively in a free and fair society. But I'm one of the person who believes in John Locke's view of what democracy is. John Locke, many years ago, stated that democracy is a system that sets boundaries on power. That's John Locke's view on democracy. That you come in place, put up a system that sets boundaries on power. And that is what exactly happened in Tanzania. I would say, looking at John Locke's view of what democracy is, Tanzania is a purely democratic country. They have a system that has set boundaries on power. Now, looking at it in a capitalist perspective, that those who have access to resources capitalize on the resources to eliminate those who cannot access them and then prevail over them for the time that they wish to stay in power. A typical view of what happened in Tanzania, that you set up a system, and the system was the criminal justice system. Get Tundu Lissu, who is your major opponent, use the laws in place, throw him in prison.
Treason, actually, for treason.
Come up with trumped up charges of treason. You have used the system to set boundaries on power. That one is completely out. Set a sham election. We are looking at democracy. Because my view is democracy, as it is in the African sentence, is absolute pretense. Set a sham election. Appoint cadres within your political party to set up the electoral process. Appoint those who you feel are better candidates on your end as your competitors in that election. Set the election, set a target of the percentage that you want to get in that election. And that's how we see Samia Suluhu getting 98%. Control the press system. And that's how you see the media houses in Tanzania reporting that 87% of the people in Tanzania voted. Suppress the media. Because if you look at the press release from BBC, it is reported that around 500 to 600 people died. But look, if you look at the reporting in Tanzania that we are referring to today, they report a death toll below 50. Not more than 50 people died. That's according to the reporting in Tanzania. So if we are to loosely look at democracy and what it is in the current state in Africa, we are simply looking at what exactly John Locke interpreted it to be. A system that sets boundaries on power. That you just come up with a system that you manipulate over and over again. If you look at Tanzania's electoral complaint rules, specifically Regulation 5, it tells you that if you are instituting any complaint, you cannot have any member or a returning officer as a party to that complaint. Just institute the complaint against the person whose victory you're challenging. What does that mean? You're going to pin all sorts of allegations against the incumbent or the successful party. And that person will simply come out to deny all the allegations you're fronting against them. You cannot implicate the officials of the Electoral Commission.
The offender.
You simply bring your complaint against the successful party. So that implies that you cannot blame the electoral body, the body that is in charge of the entire electoral process. So the person against whom you're bringing the charges and all allegations of voter bribery and all irregularities, anomalies that could have occurred in the electoral process cannot come out to defend themselves. So in other words, we have a system that has been set up to simply go through the process as you may require to go through it and maintain the status quo as is. The problem we have is that even the bodies that should have come out to condemn are simply ceremonial. Sorry to say. Yes, please.
Have any recourse in Tanzania?
Looking at what the status quo is in Tanzania, being aware that the major rivalries or the strong opponents of the incumbent were technically eliminated from participating in this electoral process. Mind you, no popular figure came out to contest against the incumbent. These were simply state mercenaries who were brought to manage the system, create your own opponents, and go through the system. Just imagine the way it is in Uganda, that you have an election where the contemporaries of the incumbent are the ones coming against him. What would you expect at the end of the day? So this was simply brought in place to fulfill just a mere fulfillment of a requirement of holding an election. So in the current state, you know, most of the things that happen today, scholars have written about them. One of the scholars of my interest, Hans Kelsen, when he was discussing the pure theory of law, he goes ahead to state, in a lawlessness society, where those in power have manipulated the system to maintain the status quo, you cannot use the law to go against them. That is why I will refer back to Uganda. You know, it is very disastrous if we keep referring to Tanzania as if everything is well home. When we had those in power looking for ways of suppressing the freedom of expression in Uganda, they came up with the Public Order Management Act as a blanket tool of eroding the freedom of expression in Uganda. And the one who fronted it, it got him caught up with the same law.
May I give you information? Just like we normally have, for us, we don't normally shut down the internet when we are having our election. In Tanzania, it was done, and trust me, we are also about to experience the same.
Going back
it
on
is a systematic thing.
Going back on the Public Order Management Act,
Yes,
I think
please.
democracy also means that there are systems where you can go for recourse. For
That
example, those sections which were very restrictive, the lawyers, ran to court and you challenged them, they were struck down. Isn't that a credit?
Now, that is where I'm heading. That however much you may like it or not, if you think that is a solution to the problem that we have against the Public Order Management Act, look at a situation where the court says you cannot try civilians in a military court, and the following day, a motion is brought back on the floor of Parliament to reinstate the same law, whilst being aware that the same constitution prohibits Parliament litigating on a matter where court has already passed or pronounced itself. But the same thing happens. Now, what does Hans Kelsen say here? In a system, a dictatorial system, where those in power are always interfering with the laws to maintain the status quo, you cannot use the same system to overthrow the government. We simply have to raise against the system, reinstate the state to zero, and rebuild back better.
Was Hans Kelsen aware that there will be elections in 2026? Because that would be the avenue for people to vote for you, to go to parliament, but also to change the system.
Hans Kelsen was not aware that there would be elections in 2026. But now, whatever we are talking about now is human nature. Man is greedy by nature. All that is happening here today has not started now. The same issues of manipulation of democracy have existed since time immemorial. I would ask you, when you quote the are they called articles? What is in the Bible?
In the Bible, there are verses.
Yes. When you quote the sections, the verses in the Bible, they apply directly in the prevailing circumstances of the day-to-day life of people today. Did the author know that in 2026 such things would happen? Of course not. But as we are seated here, whatever we are saying shall be referred to in the next years to come, even when we may not be here, because the same things happening today shall happen again.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that submission. I want to go to Enoch, and I want you to tell us whether those who are grieved in Tanzania can challenge that. But I also want you to join that with the role of the regional bodies, East African community. Did they sleep on the job? The African Union, did they sleep on the job? Do they have powers? Or they are, like one speaker said, toothless barking dogs?
Well, thank you very much, Aviani. The first question, this is what I'll have to tell you. Looking at the current circumstances and what is happening in Tanzania at a moment, it's very hard to challenge such an election. Now, I've seen something trending that someone cannot go back to court or someone cannot go to court in order to challenge a presidential elections in Kenya. And it moves as if it's, yeah, in Tanzania. And it's like it's an amendment that was just passed of recent. So I feel like maybe what should be done, and that will take me now to the bodies. Now, like the East African the East African community, and then the African Union. What has just happened in Tanzania sends a message to the East African community, and as well it sends a message to the African Union that honestly they need to do a lot. Honestly, I feel like they have not done what they're supposed to do. they have sat on their job.
I saw a congratulatory message from the chairperson of the African Union, His Excellency, the President of Ethiopia. He congratulated the President-elect of Tanzania and did not mention any of the chaos and any of the things that you highlighted. Should we be worried?
You're not worried?
Yes, we should be worried, honestly.
Vianney is not worried.
I want to hear from you whether that should be an issue to worry, because the African Union, does it have powers even to intermeddle in any affairs of the country?
Now, the honest truth of it is that even the leaders of the East African community, they are worried. If you look at what happened at the swearing-in, a few leaders from the East African community attended. And what does that speak to you? That one tells you that something is not going well. And we see that even when the Kenyan president came up and congratulated him, the people of Kenya tried to distance themselves from the congratulatory message. And they were like, no, maybe that is your personal opinion, but that's not our opinion. And what does that speak to you? Is that even the leaders, deep inside their minds, they know that what happened is not right. But however, you will see that maybe they need something from Kenya. Now, like if you see the leader of the president of Burundi attended, simply because you're going to find out that there is an interest there, that maybe he wants something maybe from Tanzania, now like to use the coast. You will see that the president of Kenya sent the vice president to attend. That however much this has happened, they still all need each other. But what it speaks to them is that they should try to distance themselves from such acts or from such occurrence, because this is seen as a tragedy. It is seen because honestly, it's not right. You cannot tell me, or you cannot tell anyone in the East African community that someone won with 98% of the votes, and having in mind that people were protesting.
What would happen if people voted up to 98%? Should those results be declared null and void, or still you are under duty as an electoral body to declare those results?
If the people had voted, it would have been right. But looking at the prevailing circumstances, an election that is tainted with abjection, with abductions, an election that is tainted with irregularities, an election that is tainted with imprisonment of leaders, of political leaders, you cannot tell that such results are legit or are valid.
Thank you very much. And I want to go to Mutesasira to pick your mind on the role of the press, because the press sometimes reports things which never exist. I don't know whether the press has reported about you, but when you read an article, you may find that 60% is true, 40% is not true, and that is you as a Mutesasira. So sometimes you may think that these matters, the press sometimes can facilitate misinformation and all that. But not only the press, how about citizens? What is their role in maintaining peace in the region, especially in periods like these, which are very contentious?
First, I was worried when you stated that you're not worried about...
So I worried you by saying I'm not worried.
Yes, about what is happening in Tanzania. I think it is a matter that should worry all of us, much as we are talking about it, but just like I said, we are today talking about Tanzania, but whatever happened in Tanzania happens almost every day whenever we have elections in any part of Africa. And I think these are serious issues which we should, as a continent, start to to talk about, just like my brother mentioned earlier before.
In fact, the internet, I would also want you to focus largely on internet. Why do we have to block internet?
No, but I wanted to comment. That's where I'm going. I wanted to comment on what he said about the AU and EAC, the East African Community. There is also SADC. Tanzania is a member to SADC. And SADC, I think, had some observers in Tanzania. They came out to say that people were denied the opportunity to elect or to participate in the election. And this is, you know, just like AU, it is also a regional body. So I think there is really something stinky in Tanzania. Now, going to the role of these leaders, I think it is Pierre Lumumba who has come up with a letter or a message to the head or chairman of the AU, where he was advising him never to, you know, to hurry doing things. Like, how do you just congratulate a person in just 2-3 days without even considering what is happening in that country? I mean, what are we doing? The Julius Nyerere never did this. The Nelson Mandelas we are normally referring to, they never did this. What are we doing wrong? What should we do right? Now, going to the role of the press. It has become a norm. You see, I have a belief that leaders are only supposed to serve, and they are only supposed to serve in the period that the electorate allow them to serve. But in Africa, it is a different case. Normally, it is like now the public, we the public now serve our leaders, and they feel they are entitled to whatever direction we wish. They are entitled to give us a direction to take. I mean, the press has always been and will always be the fourth estate. You know, we have the executive, we have the parliament, we have the judiciary as arms of government. And normally the press is considered the fourth arm, because literally just like here we are talking, the four of us in a studio, but guess how many people are watching over there? If I say a wrong statement, some hundreds may take it as true, and they may act up upon it. If I say right, they will still act on it. So it is something really vital, but you find that all the dictators we have in Africa, one of the greatest enemies they will try so much to fight will be the press, because it informs you and me and any other person out there about what is happening. I mean, if you're doing right and the people know that what you're doing is right, why are you fearing that right to be broadcasted? Why are you shutting down the internet? I'm not communicating to you. I'm communicating to any person who is interested in my communication. Okay. If you tuned on U24 today, only that our people will not do that because they like the show. But if you tuned on U24 and you feel like you don't like the show, is there anyone holding you not to change the channel? Of course no. But you see, when someone is a coward,